There are only a few weeks remaining in the college football season. The playoff race is really starting to heat up, and we're getting a better understanding of which teams are legitimate playoff contenders. Today, we'll be taking a look at 20 teams that are still alive in the playoff hunt, and whether or not they are a contender or a pretender. But before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. We'll start with Oregon, who is a contender. They're undefeated on the season, and they have a couple of really impressive victories. They took down Boise State earlier in the year, and they took down number 2 Ohio State by 1 point at home. Speaking of Ohio State, they are also a contender. Their only loss so far on the season was that 1-point loss on the road at Oregon last month. They also took down number 4 Penn State, winning by 7 points on the road. Up next is Texas, and currently, I think they're a pretender. Sure, they're 8-1 on the season, but their best victory up until this point is a 3-point win against 6-4 Vanderbilt. The one time they played a really good opponent, they got boat raced at home, losing to Georgia by 15 points. Their next 2 games should be winnable, and they close the season on the road at Texas A&M, and with that game, I think we're going to get our true answer with this Texas team. Up next is Penn State, and they're a pretender as well. They're 8-1 on the season, but their best win has probably come against Illinois, who's not even ranked inside the top 25. The only time they've played a really good opponent was when they took on Ohio State, and they lost by 7 points at home and didn't look all that great at all. Unfortunately for the Nittany Lions, they don't play any good opponents the rest of the way, so we're probably not going to get to see them play a really good team until the college football playoff, when they're probably going to get bounced in the first round. I'm really high on Indiana, as I had them ranked number 3 in my personal top 25, but as of right now, I still have them as a pretender. Now, although I still think they're worthy of being a top 10 team in the country, their strength of schedule is something that we can't ignore. Their best victories have been against 5-5 Michigan and 5-4 Nebraska. They're going to get a true test in a couple of weeks when they go on the road to play Ohio State. If they're able to knock off the Buckeyes, then the Hoosiers are truly going to be a contender. BYU is 9-0, and I have them as a contender. The reason for that is that they have a couple of really impressive victories. They have wins over number 14 SMU and number 16 Kansas State. I mean, how many teams in college football can say they have not one, but 2 top 16 victories on their resume? They have a number of close wins, but BYU has played playoff caliber teams, and they've won both times. Despite having a really ugly loss to Arkansas a month ago, I got Tennessee as a contender, and the reason for that, they have a really impressive victory over Alabama. It hasn't been a pretty season so far for Tennessee, and it kind of feels like they've been floating under the radar, but as of right now, they're tied atop the leaderboard in the SEC standings at 5-1, and there's a realistic chance they can play in the SEC title game. They do go on the road to play Georgia this weekend in what should be a really difficult matchup, but if they're able to pick up that victory, then they're even going to add to the case even more that they are one of the better teams in college football. Notre Dame is a really controversial team, but I have them as a contender. Now, let me just get this out of the way. I know their loss to Northern Illinois back in week 2 is one of the uglier losses in all of college football among the top 10 to 15 teams in the country, but when you look at their resume, it is one of the better ones. They have a victory over number 15 Texas A&M and a victory over number 19 Louisville. When you look at the rest of their schedule, they've essentially dominated every team they've played. Again, I know that loss was ugly in week 2, but you can make the case that since that point, Notre Dame has been a top 3 to 5 team in all of college football. After a dominating victory on the road at LSU, I have Alabama as a contender. They do have 2 losses on the season, so one more loss and they're on the verge of falling out of the playoff discussion, but they have quite the resume so far. They have wins over number 12 Georgia, number 21 South Carolina, and number 22 LSU. I said this in my video this past weekend, but with how Alabama looked against LSU, they looked like they were the team to beat in all of college football this year. After a rough stretch about a month ago, Ole Miss is a contender after they dominated number 3 Georgia, winning by 18 points. And their 2 losses have been really close. They fell at home to Kentucky, losing by only 3 points, and then they fell on the road to LSU, losing by 3 points as well. When you look at the rest of their schedule, they do have a dominating victory over number 21 South Carolina. They also dominated Arkansas, winning by 30 points, a team that a number of SEC teams have really struggled against this year. This past weekend was the Rebels' best game of the season, so if they can ride this momentum, they'll be college football playoff bound. Despite this being their first loss of the season, I have Miami as a pretender. They fell on the road at Georgia Tech by 5 points, losing to a team that wasn't really able to even throw the ball. When you look at their resume, they do have one top 25 victory against number 19 Louisville. But when you look at the rest of their schedule, it's absolutely disgusting. Not to mention, they had a couple of close victories earlier in the year, needing miracles and help by the referees to beat Virginia Tech and Cal. We know that Miami has one of the top offenses in college football thanks to Camp Ward, but their defense is really sus, and I'm not sure that they'd be able to hold up against some of these other teams that would be making the college football playoff. Boise State looks like they're going to be the group of 5 representative in the college football playoff, but I have them as a pretender. Their one loss of the season was against the number 1 team in the country as they fell to the Ducks by only 3 points. Now, as of right now, that's looking like a really quality loss. They also have a top 20 victory as they took down number 18 Washington State by 21 points earlier in the year. They have a pretty solid win against UNLV as they won by 5 points, and the Rebels are 7-2, so I will give them that. But the way Boise State has looked these last couple of weeks, I don't know, if you put them in the college football playoff, I personally think that they'd be getting blown out by whoever they play. And I think that's actually pretty evident considering they released hypothetical lines yesterday, and the Broncos would be a 20-point underdog against Ohio State right now. Boise State is more than deserving of being ranked number 13 at the moment, but I do think they're a pretender. Despite being ranked 14 and number 1 in the ACC, I got SMU as a pretender. They do have a top 25 victory as they took down number 19 Louisville by 7 points, but they also lost to BYU earlier in the season. They do have a couple of decent victories against Duke and Pittsburgh, 2 teams that have won 7 games in 2024, but I just don't think SMU has what it takes to hang with the big boys. Texas A&M is actually tied for first in the SEC standings, but I have them as a pretender. They have 2 losses against top 25 teams in Notre Dame and South Carolina. Not only were those losses, those were 2 games where they didn't really have any shot at winning the game. They do have a victory against the top 25 team in LSU, but with how the Tigers have been falling these last couple of weeks, that win isn't looking as impressive as it once was. Now, Texas A&M does finish the season against number 3 Texas, where they'll have a chance to not only convince me that they are a contender, they'll have a chance to punch their ticket to the SEC title game. Kansas State is still alive in the Big 12 hunt, but I have them as a pretender. They had an ugly loss to BYU earlier in the year when they lost by 30 points. They also lost on the road to 4-5 Houston the last time we saw them. Their best win of the season comes against Colorado, but they needed a last-second miracle to pull off that victory. Kansas State is still alive in the Big 12 title hunt, and they could get an automatic bid into the college football playoff, but I just haven't seen enough from them this year to think that they're worthy of being a top 12 team. Meanwhile, with Colorado, I actually have them as a contender. Now, they did have an ugly loss back in week 2 as they fell by 20 points to Nebraska, and they did lose to Kansas State a couple weeks ago at home. But like I just talked about when talking about Kansas State, that was a last-second victory where Kansas State pulled out the lead at the very end. It's a game that Colorado should have won, but despite that, they've still won 6 of their last 7 games, and pretty much all of these wins have been in dominating fashion. Colorado is currently second in the Big 12, and they're in the driver's seat to play in the Big 12 title game and punch their ticket to the college football playoff. The way their offense looks and the way their defense has been playing over the last month, I think their defense and offense could go toe-to-toe with some of the better teams in college football. Washington State is somehow still alive in the playoff discussion, and although I want to see a Pac-12 team reach the college football playoff, I got the Cougars as pretenders. They lost to Boise State earlier in the year by 3 touchdowns, and that's been the only good opponent they've played. When looking at the rest of their schedule, they've played a lot of really crappy teams. Now, shout out to them, they are 8-1 on the season, and if there's chaos in front of them, they could make it in, but I got Washington State as a pretender. I don't know what to make of Clemson. I've gone back and forth with them this year, but as of right now, I have them as a pretender. They had a nice stretch where they won 6 consecutive games, but their 2 losses this year have come to ranked teams. They actually don't have a victory against a ranked opponent, so because of that, I can't really buy into Clemson as of right now. We're gonna wrap up this video with Army, who was ranked number 24 by the College Football Playoff Committee, and I have them as a contender. I know they haven't really played anybody up until this point, but their schedule is going to give them a chance in a couple of weeks when they take on number 8 Notre Dame. For Army, despite them being ranked number 24, they still have a shot of reaching the college football playoff. If Boise State were to lose a game and Army can win out and win the American Conference, they would get the automatic bid. So because of that, I still got them as a contending team. Well, that wraps it up for today's video. Which teams do you think are contenders, and which teams do you think are pretenders? Whoever they are, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share this video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.